Alrighty, hello everyone. I'm Shaylin Price. This is an IPP, an Individual Professional Presentation for Dr. Frederick Greene's Law, Ethics, and Social Responsibility class, Business 501 at Eastern New Mexico University. Today I want to talk to you about agricultural law and how land use and farmers' right applies to it. Just a little introduction. Today I'm going to be talking about the history, the laws, current events, and ethical considerations that surround agriculture as a whole. So I'd like to think that all of you somewhat know for a little bit of what agriculture is. It's essentially how we get food on our table and clothes on our back. It took root about 12,000 years ago. It triggered such a change in the way that the world survived that it was known as the Neolithical Revolution, which was a change from a hunter-gatherer standpoint to a permanent settlement and reliable food supply standpoint. This created such a change too that it also increased our population and caused it to skyrocket. We have gone from 5 million people 10,000 years ago to approximately 7 billion today globally. Agriculture, if you didn't know, is a cultivation of crops and the domestication and harvesting of livestock. When I say crops, I'm meaning soybeans, corns, any grains, foods, vegetables, etc. When I'm talking livestock, it's cattle, hogs, sheep, goats, and I know there's a bunch of controversy as to whether poultry is considered a livestock in the agriculture industry. However, I just kind of throw it in. Same with fisheries and fish, just due to the fact that both of which are a source of food and a source of protein. In terms of agriculture being in the government, it was never really in the government. In fact, it's not even in the U.S. Constitution. It wasn't mentioned in the government until about 1820 when the House of Representatives created an agriculture committee. Soon after, in 1825, the Senate followed suit as well. From there, agriculture and government just kind of evolved. The U.S. Department of Agriculture, USDA, was formed on May 15th, 1862 by President Lincoln. I like to kind of think of it as the big man of them all, and it's considered the People's Department. Basically, it encompasses everything agriculture and regulates and leads those. It provides leadership for food, natural resources, rural development, nutrition, public policy, best available sciences, and effective management. The USDA also assists in rural communities, conservation, education and research, food and nutrition, and marketing and trade, so imports and exports involving agriculture. So when we talk about agriculture, it's a very broad subject. Narrowing it down to land use and farmers' rights, still a very broad subject. I think when we're talking about those two, there's two laws and two statutes that really hit home. Given the urban sprawl and the vast population growth, and the fact that many farms, ranches, and ag facilities do find themselves next to new neighbors, these laws become very important. Daily, people are moving into rural America, so especially due to the fact that most people do not understand what it takes to raise food and fiber. So that creates these statutes to be even more critical to ensure our nation's food supply. Basically, both of these laws, the Right to Farm Act and the Farmland Protection Policy, protects the farmers and the land that they are operating on. The Right to Farm Act is a statute in all 50 states. Each state has their own statute. They kind of started around 1970. Basically, what it does is it protects all qualifying farmers and ranchers. It conserves, protects, encourages, develops, and improves agricultural land for the production of agricultural products. So essentially what it is in its title is the preservation and protection of agricultural land for the production of agricultural products. It reduces loss to the state of its agricultural resources by limiting the chances in which agriculture operations may be deemed a nuisance. And when I say nuisance, I mean the literal term nuisance, meaning any person, thing, or circumstance causing an inconvenience, an annoyance, unlawful interference with the use and enjoyment of a person's land. We all have our rights to our land. However, the Right to Farm Act protects farmers' land. So if a farmer were to be in operation for 1 year or more, a person cannot move in, rent, or anything with land next to him and determine the farm next to him is a nuisance. However, the farm could be deemed a nuisance if it is negligently or illegally being ran. Um, Basically, what this act covers is any ag facility, meaning any land, building, structure, pond, machinery, or even equipment that helps in the production of agriculture, meaning crops, livestock, animals, poultry, honeybees, etc. Just recently, there was an amendment to New Mexico's Right to Farm Act here in 2016. It was an additional paragraph to Section 4793, and it stated that one cannot bring suit for nuisance unless operation has substantially changed both in nature and scope of its operations. So here's a great example. If a dairy changes its milking parlor and increases its cow numbers, that is not a change in both nature and scope. However, if a farm changes from a row crop production to a 5,000 head hog farm, that is in fact a change in nature and scope and therefore could be deemed a nuisance. Farmland protection policy. So basically what this is what it is in its title. It protects all farmland. A study was actually done in 1980 and 1981 that found that millions of farmland acres were being converted each year. And in fact, in a Compact Cities report, it was found that those acres were being converted into urban sprawl as a result of programs funded by the federal government. So the FPPA policy came into act. In response to this sprawl, the Congress passed the Agriculture and Food Act in 1981, which contained the Farmland Protection Policy Act, Section 1539 through 1549. The FPA basically minimizes the impact federal programs have on unnecessary and irreversible conversion of farmland to non-agricultural uses. It also assures that federal programs will abide by state and local units of government as well as private programs and policies to protect farmland. So moving on to a current event occurring right now in agriculture actually is the issue of factory farming. It's kind of funny because factory farming, if you kind of look into it, factory farming has always been around. Factory farming is a large number of animals being confined. So when we look into it, factory farming has been around due to the fact that feedlots have always been around and so on and so forth. However, people are just starting to notice it and claiming it being unethical due to the fact that it is inhumane for the animals and jeopardizes the animals' welfare. Factory farming basically dominates the U.S. production. It maximizes agribusiness profits. However, it doesn't take into consideration the environment, the soil, water quality, and food safety that it is affecting. And not to mention, it is a strain on natural resources just to the fact that with so many animals being confined in such a small space, there's being a lot of waste produced that does in fact pollute our land, air, and water. I think one of the biggest things against factory farming is the fact that these animals are being bred to grow unnaturally fast and large for maximizing meat, egg, and milk production. When we look at the unethical considerations of this, obviously there's numerous. Are farmers doing everything they can to protect the animals? Yes. Is it make it ethical? No. However, I think agriculture necessarily kind of started out unethical from the beginning. Agriculture dating back to the settlement period and westward migration. There was land frauds, there was broken treaties with Native Americans, there was claim jumping with Native Americans, squatter rights, and so on and so forth. There's been lots of violations to the Right to Farm Act. In fact, the Humane Society is one of the biggest proponents against the Right to Farm Act. Essentially, the Humane Society is wanting to control and dictate the way farmers operate their farms. They do not believe that factory farming is ethical, and they believe it should be put to an end. Again, the Right to Farm Act protects them from this. However, it is a defense. However, it does not prevent filing of lawsuits towards them. So there's been multiple lawsuits that the Humane Society has filed against numerous farmers just for the way that animals are kept and so on and so forth. Even so much that there has been changes in hen cage sizes, pig crate sizes, feedlot pen sizes, and so on. I think one of the big things when considering ethical considerations within agriculture and abiding by the Right to Farm Act and the Farmland Protection Act is that farmers are really starting to believe that there's too much bureaucracy in agriculture. There's always been questions of right and wrong, and it's becoming an even more larger concern. However, farmers are still trying to cope with debt restructuring, livestock welfare, pesticide use, crop insurance regulations, and many more. In fact, Farm Futures magazine did a survey, and it reported that 59% of 900 farmers believe that ethical standards have decreased in the agriculture world. More than a third also agreed of those 900 farmers that with a statement that it would be impossible to make an income if farmers followed all the rules and regulations made in Washington. So, do farmers have the right to farm? Yes, no doubt. Are they violating some ethical concerns? Yes, probably. However, they haven't been looked into in years and years, and they're just now coming around. I think what is really interesting is the fact that political power base is shrinking, is devastating interests, and the interests of farmers are being savaged by people who really don't understand anything about a barnyard. Farmers are beginning to feel squeezed by economic pressure, and they're starting to take shortcuts. I think with abiding by the Right to Farm Act and farmers as well as government working together to kind of levy the playing field, I think ethics can definitely be strengthened in the agriculture world. These are my references. I hope you guys enjoyed the presentation and have a good one.